Hello, Brontë-saurs and Eyre-Heads. Coming up on episode 19 of Sundays with Jane Eyre, Impediment. We'll be finishing volume 2 with chapter 11 or chapter 26 of the novel. And our co-host will be Dr. Claire O'Callaghan, author of Emily Brontë Reappraised. Okay, our story in about 3 minutes. Young Jane has survived an abusive childhood at the hands of the Reed family and the Lowood school where she was sent for being too rebellious. Her best friend at school, the saintly Helen Burns, dies at a very young age. When she turns 18, Jane is hired to be a governess at Thornfield to educate Mr. Rochester's ward, Adele. Jane is disappointed. Thornfield is not haunted, but she does hear a strange laugh coming from the attic. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, assures her it is just the servant Grace Poole. Jane meets Mr. Rochester. He falls off his horse. He's fascinated by her watercolor paintings, and they begin to have intimate conversations about their inner lives. One night, a mysterious fire breaks out in Rochester's bedroom. Jane rescues him by dousing the fire and him with water. They hold hands. The next day, Jane thinks Grace Poole tried to murder him and can't understand why Rochester allows her to be at Thornfield. Friends of Mr. Rochester come to Thornfield for an extended holiday, including Blanche Ingram, whom everyone believes is going to marry Rochester. Jane continues her inner battle over her love for Rochester as she watches him interact with the insufferable Blanche. The mysterious Mr. Mason arrives from the West Indies, and an old Romany woman arrives to tell the ladies' fortunes. Jane hears her fortunes, but it turns out it was Rochester in disguise as the fortune teller all along. What? During the night, Jane is awakened by a cry from the attic, then someone calling for help. Rochester comes for her, brings her to the attic, and there she finds Mason lying bloody in his bed. Jane assumes that it's Grace Poole who has tried to murder him. She helps Rochester attend to Mason, then they get him out of the house before anyone else wakes up. Rochester and Jane sit in the garden and talk alone. Jane is summoned back to her childhood home, Gateshead, by her dying Aunt Reed, and learns that her aunt had withheld from Jane a letter from an uncle wishing to make her the heir to his fortune. But Mrs. Reed told him that Jane was dead. Jane returns to Thornfield, and she and Rochester finally reveal their love for each other in the orchard at night. Jane utters the famous line, "I am no bird and no net ensnares me," and there is kissing. Yes, this is a kissing book. Kissing in the rain, too. Rochester proposes to Jane, or Jane proposes to Rochester. In any case, they agree to marry, but later that night there's a terrific storm, and lightning destroys the great horse chestnut tree in the orchard. Rochester takes Jane shopping in what would be the worst rom-com shopping montage ever. He tells a fairy story to Adele and sings a song while he and Jane finally have an out-and-out open courtship. A couple nights before the wedding, Jane has a nightmare and wakes to find a strange and very scary woman in her bedroom who tears her wedding veil in half. Rochester tells her not to worry, but to be on the safe side, don't sleep in your own bed the night before the wedding. In Volume 2, Chapter 11, we have the wedding of Jane and Rochester. I love a wedding. I wonder who will catch the bouquet. You don't want to miss the exciting wedding episode of Sundays with Jane Eyre from the Rosenbach.